Good morning to you, and a warm welcome from St. Paul's Church in Parkhurst, Johannesburg. I say a warm welcome on this very cold day, and it may be that some of our parishioners are not able to attend in person because of the cold weather. We would certainly understand that. But also we know that we have got an extended family of St. Paul's, those of you who join us online. So we welcome you here today with us. I'm the Reverend Maureen Aitken, and I'm preaching today. I'd like to go into the ministry of the word though and give you the readings for today. So they are these. The Old Testament reading is 1 Kings 19, 1 to 4, and then 8 to 15a. The last two, of course, are the verses. There are two Psalms today, and they go very well together. It's Psalm 42 and 43. And then the New Testament reading is Galatians 3, 23 to 29. And then, of course, the Gospel for today is the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 8, verses 26 to 39. And that is Jesus restoring a demon-possessed man. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our God and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I'm not going to say that it's refreshing to change, but having been soaked in the Gospel of St. John for so many months now, moving back to Luke's Gospel is certainly different. And living in South Africa, surrounded by its many societal problems, today's Gospel draws us right back to being a follower of Jesus and what it means for us individually. So let's perhaps unpack this together. Jesus meets this demon-possessed man in Gentile, not Jewish territory. His encounter with the tormented man will lead to a total transformation of the man himself, which again highlights the fact that nothing is impossible for God, and the fact that Jesus came to restore the lost and the rejected people of this world. An encounter with Jesus leads to a radical transformation. That was the case then with this man, and it's still the case for us today. Radical transformation of our society is essential in today's world, especially as we think of the various losses that we have suffered over the last 3 COVID-affected years. There have been many different kinds of losses: death, livelihoods, and hope, to name just a few. And if ever we needed a witness to authenticate the reality of Jesus, surely it is only the transformations that only he can achieve. We are fully human witnesses for God in different real-life places and situations. But this passage describing Jesus' encounter with this demon-possessed man is disturbing in many ways. It speaks to the truth that we live in a horror-filled world. Think of this man and how other people were totally insensitive to what he was experiencing in his life. He was literally thrown out of society, cast aside. For a long time, this man had not worn any clothes or lived in a house. He had in fact lived in the bowels of the tombs where no one seemed to see him. He was chained hand and foot. He was, as it happens, guarded 24 hours a day, but that was to ensure that he was kept away from so-called normal people. But today, when he saw and heard Jesus, he broke away from his chains and managed to escape to a solitary place. He was able to confront Jesus, who did not reject him as others had. In fact, Jesus seems to know him. When asked for his name by Jesus, he replied, "Legion," for he had been tortured by many demons, too many to name or understand. As the demons left the man, they begged Jesus to let him enter a herd of pigs, and as they did so, the herd ran down a steep bank into a lake, and they were drowned. Now, in order to understand this event, we have to confront it head on, no holds barred. This man was more than shunned by society. He was totally rejected. He had no human value at all. No one wanted to know him or to know about him. But the reality is, we still do that today when we are forced to confront such tragic realities. And we are told that when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want from me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." Jesus' response was to command the impure spirit to come out of the man, and therefore to heal him. And when the people found him, he was sitting at the feet of Jesus, fully dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid, so afraid of what they had seen happen, that they actually asked Jesus to leave, which he did, because he knew that they had no way of understanding what had come about. And although the cured man wanted to go with Jesus, Jesus sent him home and said he should tell others how much God had done for him. And of course he did so. And we need to confront a story like this and understand what the people were afraid of. And the truth is that they were afraid of themselves. They had learned to control unpleasant situations and people like the demon-possessed man. And they did so by ignoring him, turning their back on him. He just did not exist for them. And it was easier to throw him out of society to an outcast place where they could forget all about him, out of sight, out of mind. We do this today because we don't know what to do with people like this. Think of the people that we come across, the beggars, the homeless people at traffic light intersections. Imagine what it's like for them when they got up this morning. The only arsenal they had was the fact that they knew they needed to go out and beg to get money to try and keep body and soul together. And yet for so many people, and it's a very natural thing to do, I know that, we look the other way. We busy ourselves with something. All of a sudden, something in our handbag seems to be so eye-catching and so on. But what it means for that person is that we reject them. We metaphorically slap them in the face. To actually not be willing to recognize another person, and especially in our African culture, is to actually say to them, "You do not exist." There is so much that we need to learn from our day-to-day lives. But anyway, be that as it may. We consider ourselves superior. We can dominate this kind of human tragedy by ignoring it. But that is not what Jesus did, and he commands us to do likewise. We must lean in and allow ourselves to confront our prejudice. Faced with such a situation, we have to allow it to touch us. We have to confront our own behaviors. And the question that implies for us is whether the world has moved on. And the answer is, by and large, no, it hasn't. We cannot be set free from ourselves by trying to control it somehow. We are too scared of our own rejection of such people and circumstances. We each need to ask ourselves, and I do this of myself, could we be the cause of some person, some poor person, unable to be freed from their suffering, unable to be transformed? When you have time, read Isaiah 61. And basically the bottom line there is that God rejects people who have uncaring attitudes. He judges them, and he says he will destroy them. But God, being God, does not destroy them. He allows a just remnant to be saved. But those who are openly rebellious, he turns his back on them. So what about us, you and I? Do we resent God's ability to transform systems and people? Do we prefer to live with societal filth rather than change the cause of it? For God to be present, to be known in society, requires the inclusion of the weak and the downtrodden. The inclusion of the weak and the downtrodden. This is the God we need to know, a God of high standards who will empower us to live in a world of inclusion, not rejection of people and situations just because we believe that we cannot control them to our own satisfaction. Because, my friends, dearly beloved, there will be a day of judgment for us all. We cannot escape that. Earlier this week, we celebrated Youth Day, and I found myself thinking of all the intergenerational wisdom of elderly people in our society. They're needed, they need to be included and to be listened to as we confront the ills which affect our young people, as we seek to find solutions to improve their life. But in many cases, not all, what do we do with the elderly? We confine them to rural areas. We confine them to substandard homes for the aged, instead of making them part of our lives. So let's close on this thought. My friends, when no one is to blame, everyone is to blame. Amen.
Amen.